Hello, everyone. Howie here. Welcome to the Hain Radio Live Show. Today is Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. We've been talking about Thomas Jefferson and John Locke. We've been talking about the founding principles of the nation, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And we've been looking at the history of the document and the fundamental reason we have a government, right, is to enhance our freedoms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we looked back at John Locke, who instead of pursuit of happiness had property or estate, and reiterating it from the past few episodes that Jefferson said pursuit of happiness. Again, emphasizing pursuit, so it's not a guarantee of happiness. And pursuit of what? Happiness accompanying property. So it's not just the property of geographic land or the items that you own, but your intellectual property and your virtue. And we give that power, we give some power over to the federal government, to the government. We submit ourselves in order for that government to enhance our freedoms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when that government grows out of control, it begins to eat up the same liberties that we entrusted to the government. All right, so the government doesn't give us power. God gives us power, the rights to pursue these, the dignity. And then in our agreement with the government, we hand over some power so that they're enhanced. But when that government begins to metastasize, if you will, into a cancer and begin to eat the healthy, which is the rights we have by God, then we have to do something. And we have. And Trump is doing something. So by looking at Jefferson, the last few episodes, I want to go to another Virginia president. So the first five presidents, right? So we have Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. Four of them from Virginia, the Virginia Dynasty. Okay, and four from Virginia all were reelected. So Washington twice. And then, of course, there were no term limits back then. Washington just resigned after the second one. And then we had Adams for one from Massachusetts. He loses his reelection. Jefferson is elected once and then reelected for 8 years from Virginia. Washington was from Virginia. And after Adams, we have James Madison. James Madison is elected twice. Okay. And the last Virginian, James Monroe, is elected twice. Okay, so Virginia Dynasty between Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, 24 years of a Virginia president. And Monroe is the last founding father to be elected president. So James Monroe is a very significant person. And right now we're seeing Trump do something, and if we don't understand the context, if we don't understand the history, if we don't understand the geopolitical, strategic, military, economic, tariff, border, hemisphere, geographic, literally the geography that we're in, then all this seems haphazard. And if you listen to Democrats, he's just a wild man. But what he is doing is he is systematically implementing the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, the Monroe Doctrine. Let's look at it. Let's look at some history here. And we go, let me bring it up and I'll share it with you. This is from the National Archives. So let's look at the archives here. Okay, and we'll share. Okay, in the National Archives, and make sure we're sharing with you. Yeah, we are. Good. Okay, and here. So National Archives, the Monroe Doctrine. You might remember this from your social studies class. Those of you that are maybe in the 40s or 50s who actually had social studies, civics. We learned how government functioned. Okay. Monroe Doctrine, 1823. The archives, the National Archives is usually a pretty good source. The Monroe Doctrine was articulated in President James Monroe's 7th annual message to Congress on December 2nd, 1823. The European powers, according to Monroe, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States' sphere of interest. Let's read 3 paragraphs here. President James Monroe, 1823 annual message to Congress contained the Monroe Doctrine, which warned European powers not to interfere in the affairs of the Western Hemisphere. Right? Already, there's the connection. Understandably, the United States has always taken a particular interest in its closest neighbors, the nations of the Western Hemisphere. Equally understandably, expressions of this current concern have not always been favorably regarded by other American nations. The Monroe Doctrine is the best known U.S. policy toward the Western Hemisphere, buried in a routine annual message delivered to Congress by James Monroe in December 1823. The doctrine warns European nations that the United States would not tolerate further colonization or puppet monarchs. Don't have colonies here. Don't prop up any leaders in these countries that are either to the north or the south of us. The doctrine was conceived to meet major concerns of the moment, but it soon became a watchword of U.S. policy in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, why? Look what Trump is doing. We're going to go from the north and then proceed south. Okay, it also is connected with, let's go out wide as we can. Global view. Okay. China, Russia, Europe, United States. Okay. Europe, in a sense, I'm sorry to say, but in many ways, a proxy of the United States at this point. Okay, their military is not powerful. Their economy, as we saw, our GDP is in the time the European Union has been together. Depending on what stats you look at, the United States GDP is basically double that of Europe, of the European Union. Our economy is a driving force of the Western world, and our military is the driving force of the Western world, and our politics basically are global. And then we have China. Right. And now we see with the AI battle, like the war over AI, who's got the real AI, who's going to lead in that? It's like the space war. Who's getting to space first? We had with the Russians. Now we have AI, and we're going to have Trump's tariffs go into effect with Russia, with China, and of course with Russia, we have Russia, Ukraine, and Russia, Iran. Okay, and the interference there, and of course as a nuclear state, China and Russia, we have to work this out. So, and we spoke about how you isolate Iran by working out your relationships with China and with Russia. But what is he also doing? So Trump is, he's involved with Ukraine. He's going to work that out. Involved in the Middle East and Gaza. Right, the hostages are being released. China, this will work itself out with this tariff battle. Russia, there will be peace in Ukraine. It's not going to just be a blank check to Ukraine anymore. And we see Zelensky's claiming only 75 billion of the, I think it was over 200 billion was promised to them. He doesn't know where the rest is, or we don't know where the rest is. Meanwhile, Musk is going through USAID, and showing how scandalous it is. So it's a full-fledged operation Trump's got going. Okay, China, Russia, Iran, Gaza. He goes to Davos. Right, he doesn't go, but he sends him. He speaks at Davos. We saw Javier Milei speak at Davos. We saw the Finnish president. People are getting in line. We see the turmoil in British politics. We see Le Pen in France. We see Meloni in Italy, and we see Alice Vidal in the AfD candidate in Germany. So this Trump's movement here, or the movement Trump's involved in, if you will, is not just him, and also the president of El Salvador and the president of Hungary. Okay, so there's many and of course, even on our local level, more local level, you have someone like DeSantis in Florida, who's obviously not a world leader, nation leader, but a leader of a major state. So Trump is not an island. Trump is somebody returning to a certain type of philosophy, and that philosophy, some people are claiming that he's the dictator. But every move that's happening is to make America stronger, to put America's interests first, which all countries should be doing. We heard from the Finnish president last week. That's what they should do. That's what they should do. Every country should be looking out for their interests first. That's what their government is for. Okay. And we also heard from the Finnish government how, the things that are important to them, their independence, their territorial their, integrity, okay, their sovereignty as a nation. Again, their interests first. All right. That's across the sea, the oceans. Trump is doing something local. Canada, Mexico, Guantanamo Bay, okay? Greenland, Gulf of Mexico, even renaming the Gulf of Mexico. So what is happening? The Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine. If you want to keep America safe, if America's safety first, so on the issue of economy, it's American economy first. Issue of interest, American interest first. American prosperity first, like Rubio laid out, right? If it doesn't make us stronger or safer or more prosperous, we're not doing it. So if you want a safe, strong United States, continental United States, what's the best buffer? Not just a good border, the countries that are on your border. So he's getting involved in Mexico and Canada. But he's doing more than that. There's talk about Greenland. Why? Let's look at it. Let's look at why he's not a madman who's just throwing out names of countries that he would like to take possession of. There's a reason. Monroe Doctrine. When James Monroe conceived the idea and presented to the Congress in the early 1800s, it wasn't insane. It made sense. So let's look at what Greenland. Why Greenland? Let's go up. Okay. We're going to go look at two different articles regarding Greenland. First one is from, I think it's from our friends at CNN. Yeah, it's from our friends at CNN. So, okay, let's look. This is CNN Climate. Trump wants to buy Greenland again. Here's why he's so interested in the world's largest island. There's a lot of good information in this article. Give CNN a credit sometimes, rarely, but when they're good, when it's a good article and it works, it helps us, I'll give credit. Always give credit to the journalist. Laura Pattison from CNN. This was updated Wednesday, January 8th. Okay. And then I got one that's a little bit newer, but this is going to give us some apparently Donald Trump Jr. Visited Greenland weeks after his father said he wanted to buy it. Okay, here we go. CNN. On Tuesday, Donald Trump Jr. landed in Greenland, the Arctic island his father, president-elect, this was written before Trump was inaugurated, has expressed a strong desire to purchase, despite sharp statements from Greenland that it is not for sale. Trump Jr. framed the trip as a little bit of fun, telling CNN, as an outdoorsman, I'm excited to stop into Greenland for this week. Okay, so Trump is always the showman, and I mean showman. I mean showman in a really statesman aspect. So he sends his son. I mean, it's not an accident that his son goes to Greenland. Okay, it plants seeds. It makes people think. Why is his son? Just like if he wanted to buy a property, he would send his son to go take a look at it. But the trip has fueled speculation about what exactly his father's plans are for this Arctic territory. In December, Trump revived calls made in his first presidency for U.S. ownership of Greenland, calling it an absolute necessity. Asked at a Tuesday news conference whether he would rule out using military or economic coercion to gain Greenland or Panama, which Trump has also expressed desire to own, the president-elect responded, "No, I can't assure you on either of those two, but I can say this. We need them for economic security." The president-elect says owning Greenland is vital for U.S. security, but experts say he may also be eyeing other aspects of Greenland, such as its trove of natural resources, including rare earth metals, which may become more accessible as climate change melts the territory's ice. A unique geopolitical position. Here we go. Monroe Doctrine, geopolitics. This is what you get here. This show. We're going to constantly fly high and look at the worldview, constantly. Because to understand the United States, we need to understand the world and vice versa. Greenland, especially in this day and age of internet and social media and just, the boundaries are there, but the boundaries of communication are not. So therefore, we have to know what's going on in other countries. And it's also affirming when you realize it's not just Trump. There are many leaders in this world who are seeing this light, who are returning to this light and are returning and saying enough with these massive bureaucracies that just consume and consume and consume. And as they consume, they infringe on personal civil liberties. Greenland is the world's largest island and home to 56,000 people. A former Danish colony and now an autonomous territory of Denmark, it occupies a unique geopolitical position, sitting between the U.S. and Europe. Its capital city, Nuuk, is closer to New York than it is to Denmark's capital, Copenhagen. Think about that. At the end of the day, we have bodies. We occupy space. We live on physical land. Where things are located matters. Greenland, sitting between the U.S. and Europe, up north, Russia, its capital city, and then check this out, its capital city, Nuuk, it's N-U-U-K, it's pronounced like nuclear, like Nuuk, is closer to New York than it is to Denmark's capital, Copenhagen. Right away, situate us. It's long been seen as a key for U.S. security, especially to repel a potential attack from Russia, said Ulrich Promgod, a senior researcher at the Danish Institute for International Studies. The Northwest Passage shipping lane runs along its coast, and the island is part of the Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom gap, a strategic maritime region. Trump is not the first U.S. president to float the idea of buying Greenland. What? He's not crazy? He's not just an insane man yelling things? See? Context. They're always going to frame Trump as a wild man, as crazy, as a billionaire, as a dictator. No, not the first president. In 1867, when President Andrew Johnson bought Alaska, he also considered purchasing Greenland. At the end of World War II, the Truman administration offered Denmark $100 million for the island, according to documents first reported on by Danish media. Whoa, Truman wanted Greenland. Andrew Johnson wanted Greenland. Remember, we did buy Alaska. Neither offer came to fruition, but under a 1951 defense treaty, the U.S. got an air base now called Pitfwick Space Base in northwest Greenland, midway between Moscow and New York. Geographical significance, geopolitical significance, geostrategic, geoeconomic, geosignificant, geopolitics. He is taking the Western Hemisphere. He's building a huge buffer around our nation. You build a wall, and if around your castle, castle has a big wall, then you build a protective wall around the castle structure itself. And if you want more protection, what do? You build a moat. And if you want that moat to be even more intimidating, you put crocodiles in it. Buffers. He is buffering the United States. Neither came to, let's see, midway between Moscow and New York. It's the northernmost outpost of the U.S. Armed Forces and is equipped with a missile warning system. That's the key. Then when Israel was attacked by Iran and all those missiles came over and their missile defense system shot down the great majority of the Iranian missiles, we need that. We need to be able to shoot down missiles, obviously. And as the Iran nuclear threat intensifies, of course, the U.S. is keen to ensure no hostile great powers control Greenland because it can be a foothold for attacking the U.S., Premgod told CNN. And again, what's to stop China from taking it or Russia from taking it? Rare and rich minerals is more. What might be even more appealing to Trump, however, is Greenland's rich deposits of natural resources, said Klaus Dodds, professor of geopolitics at Royal Holloway, University of London. These include oil and gas, as well as the rare earth materials in high demand for the electric cars and wind turbines of the green transition, as well as for manufacturing military equipment. Look at that picture of Greenland. One of the many research stations on the Greenland ice sheet that scientists use to track movement and elevation. All right, currently China, this is it, The rare materials is important because China really has almost a monopoly on it. Currently, China dominates global rare earth production and has already threatened to restrict the export of critical minerals and associated technologies ahead of Trump's second term. Do you remember Trump's term today? The tariffs. See how he's working on both fronts? Tariffs to China. China can restrict the minerals they send that we need, but he's looking at Greenland. That not only has a in the sense of military significance in protecting us, it also has a significance of rare materials. Precisely, I don't know if it's exactly the same ones, but from what I'm reading here, it seems like in the same realm that China could withhold from us. So he's working offense and defense at the same time. There is no question at all that Trump and his advisors are very concerned about the stranglehold that China appears to have, Dodds told CNN. Greenland offers a potentially rich source of these critical minerals, he added. I think Greenland is really about keeping China out. And also, this is another fact. Opportunities as the ice melts. Melting ice and rapidly rising Arctic temperatures giving Greenland a front row seat to the climate crisis. But some also see economic opportunities as climate change reshapes the country. The loss of ice has opened up shipping routes, increasing the amount of time they can be navigating during the Northern Hemisphere summer. Arctic shipping rose 37% over the decade to 2024, according to the Arctic Council, in part due to melting ice. Trump, I think, instinctively gets the idea that the Arctic is melting and the perceived opportunities, Dodd said. Although he cautioned the reality, conditions along these routes are still often treacherous, and melting ice may make waters even more dangerous to navigate. You know what this reminds me of? You remember when we listened to Mark Andreessen on the show? And Mark Andreessen praised Trump as one of these very unique human beings that can handle real estate, development, communication, and complex systems, that his ability to see the potential for the fires out in California or the danger, right? The dangers Germany faced about energy, he foresaw. And we spoke, it's not like a prophecy, it's the ability to look at a system now and accurately understand what the complexity of the system, and then therefore foresee the potential consequences, though consequences being such as Germany, an energy crisis, and in California, a wildfire that spreads out of control. And look what this gentleman Dodd is saying. Trump, I think, instinctively gets the idea that the Arctic is melting. So Trump is looking at a complex system, including the shifting ice, political significance, military significance of the island, the significance of the minerals in this island, and now the shipping lanes are changing because the amount of time you can spend in the water if there's less ice. Okay, and it confirms Mark Andreessen's point about Trump having the ability to think about complex systems and therefore see potential consequences and make moves to acquire something that may be more valuable later than it is now. Speculation, another trait of a developer. Let's read a couple more paragraphs. There is also a suggestion that melting ice may make natural resources easier to access, but the climate crisis has not yet proved much of a game changer for this, said Philip Steinberg, a geography professor at the University of Durham. It's not that climate change is making Greenland's resources more accessible, he told CNN, but rather more necessary. Could it actually happen? The governments of both Denmark and Greenland have come out strongly against the idea the Arctic nation can be purchased. We are not for sale and will never be for sale. We must not lose our years-long struggle for freedom, Greenland's Prime Minister Mute Egede wrote in a Facebook post in late December. All right, I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to go to the next one because it's an updated one, okay? And I think it's really, really fascinating. And remember the historical context. Monroe Doctrine. Truman wanted it, right? Andrew Johnson wanted it. This isn't radical. Okay? And here we go. Let's pull up the next article. And here, okay, let me share this one. This is from The Independent. And this will continue our journey. And we're gonna go. We have a lot to do today. We got to keep moving. All right, this is from The Independent. Trump tells. Let me make sure. Are we sharing? Yeah, we're sharing. We're good. All right. Trump tells Danish PM, prime minister, he's serious about taking over Greenland in fiery call that has Danes in crisis mode. This is from Friday, the 24th of January. Okay, so this is a few weeks later than the last report. President has wanted the U.S. to obtain Greenland since his first term. Let's see, this is by Katie Hawkinson, wrote this. And there we have a picture of RFK Jr., actually a video of him in Greenland. President Donald Trump, hold on, let me close that. President Donald Trump told Denmark's prime minister he is serious about taking over Greenland in a fiery phone call last week, the Financial Times reports. Trump and Mette Frederiksen spoke on the phone for 45 minutes last week after the president said he wanted the U.S. to take Greenland, despite officials repeatedly saying it is not for sale. The phone call was fiery, the Financial Times reports, with one official with knowledge of the conversation calling it horrendous. He was very firm, another unnamed source told the Financial Times. It was a cold shower. Before, it was hard to take it seriously, but I do think it is serious and potentially very dangerous. Officials also told the Financial Times Trump was aggressive and confrontational despite Frederiksen's offer to increase Greenland-U.S. cooperation on military bases and natural resource exploitation. Okay, let's keep going. The call, utterly, let me get rid of this, sorry. The call utterly freaked out the Danes, one Danish official told the Financial Times. The intent was very clear, another official told the outlet. They want it. The Danes are now in crisis mode. Brian Hughes, a spokesman for the National Security Council, told Fox that Trump has made it clear, quote, the safety and security of Greenland is important to the United States as China and Russia make significant investments throughout the Arctic region. There it is. Complex systems. He sees the significance in terms of military, in terms of resources, in terms of shipping, in terms of trade. The president is committed to not only protecting U.S. interests in the Arctic, but also working with Greenland to ensure mutual prosperity for both nations, he added. Let's keep going. Trump has been floating the idea of buying or otherwise taking over Greenland, an island home to 56,000 people, since his first term. He refused to rule out the possible use of military force in Greenland when pressed earlier this month during a press conference. For purpose of national security and freedom throughout the world, this is Trump, the United States of America feels that the ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. That's strong language. An absolute necessity, Trump wrote on Truth Social last month. Meanwhile, Frederiksen has also said that Greenland's Prime Minister Mute-Edgy has been very, very clear. There is a lot of support among the people of Greenland that Greenland is not for sale and will not be in the future. All right. Residents aren't happy either. Bilo Chemnitz, who lives in the capital city of Nuuk, told Washington Post, I don't trust the guy. Now we're going to start with all the negative comments about Trump. I want Greenland to stay like it is, he added. I don't like the way he talks about Greenland. Resident Ida Abelson similarly told the Post. Okay, let's keep going. I guess that's it. Okay, sorry about that. We're done. We're done with that one. So let me stop sharing. So here we go. Let's set the scene. He wants Greenland. All right, 2 weeks later, he's in a fiery call with the president, the prime minister of Denmark. He's aggressive. He sees this just like he's been aggressive with certain other people in the Western Hemisphere. So there's your stance on Greenland. We start with the Monroe Doctrine, right? We remember what that was. We see how it was significant back then. We see how other presidents, Andrew Johnson, and Truman were interested in Greenland. We see how Trump is dealing both offensively and defensively with all these issues at once. Then we move to Canada. Of course, Canada is very significant. Canada is significant in terms of it's a major buffer. And we have a border. Who's coming in? Most people are coming in the United States from the Mexican border, but it's a huge border, the northern border. So he threatens tariffs. So let's take a look quickly at the Trump tariff issue here. Oh, wow. Hold on. I got to share this. This I found too. All right, let me share. This is good. And to show the complexity of Trump's thinking and planning ahead, little article I found in Forbes. Am I sharing? Let me make sure I'm sharing. Yep, here it is. Check this out. Forbes. This is interesting. In a new surprise, President Trump announces America will order 40 big icebreakers. Icebreakers. What do you need icebreakers for? Arctic water. Frozen water. Where's frozen water? Not in the Mediterranean. Okay? He's it's consistent, it's thorough, he's moving. Okay, let's take a quick. This is by Craig Hooper, senior contributor. It's from January 28th, so it's recent. Okay. President Donald Trump is continuing his first-time focus on building a big new American icebreaker fleet. Days after his second inauguration, the president broke from a North Carolina hurricane recovery briefing and made a surprise announcement that we're going to order about 40 big icebreakers. The statement, widely dismissed by industry experts as a gaffe, was well timed. Just as Trump was committing the United States to a massive, as yet unfunded 40 icebreaker buildup, a raggedy set of aged American icebreaking tugs were struggling to free a 663-foot transport ship, the Canadian-flagged Manitoulin, trapped by wind-blown lake ice. All right, so once again, people think he made a gaffe. People think he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ahead of them. They don't know the workings of what he's doing. And remember who's the biggest, remember our show. If you watch our show, you learn. Who's the biggest producer of icebreakers? Finland. They design them, they manufacture them. Remember we listened to the conversation with President Stubb, Alexander Stubb. Very good conversation. He said that NATO and the European Union should listen to Trump. He praised Trump. And he also mentioned that Trump, about being interested in icebreakers. Finland produces icebreakers. Common ground. You build a bridge. The bridge on each side needs rock. You can't have sand on one side of the bridge. Finland is interested in selling icebreakers. We're interested in Arctic waters. Icebreakers help. There's a bridge. Finland's our friend. He says the European Union, listen to Trump. You see how it works? All right. So we're going to go from that to Canada. Okay. So we got icebreakers now. Consistent. Let's see what we got here. Here we go. Let me share. We good? Screen. And I share. Here's our update on Canada. Okay. The National Post. The National Post. All right. I'm sharing and I could go back. This is U.S. tariffs on hold 30 days after Canada commits to beefing up border security. So Canada has agreed to deploy its prior $1.3 billion spending plan and nearly 10,000 frontline personnel to the border. This was written by Stephanie Taylor, Kathleen Levesque, and Anton Trinpierre. This is February 3rd, 2025. Okay, so just yesterday. Okay. And we're going to quickly look at this. Ottawa, Canada has agreed to deploy its $1.3 billion border enhancement plan. That sounds like an improvement, promising to control the border, along with thousands of frontline personnel to strengthen security on the U.S. boundary in exchange for the White House pausing 25% tariffs for at least 30 days. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement on social media on Monday afternoon, shortly after his second phone call of the day with U.S. President Donald Trump. I love this stuff. Do your job, or the free lunch is over. Okay, and we're going to charge you 25%. They can't survive. This is a premium market, United States, the premium market of the world. You want to be in the premium market, you got to play. And if you're not going to do your job on the border, then you're going to pay a premium price to get into the premium market. Guess what? A couple phone calls. Trudeau, this is what he said. I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border, he wrote. Trudeau added that Canada will also be making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar, to list drug cartels as terrorists. That's what we did. And to launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. Promises, he said, will cost $200 million. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith had been calling on the federal government to appoint a border czar to appease the U.S. administration. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together, Trudeau added. There you go. He got the job done. And we'll see what happens over the next 30 days. But boy, if you have a relative, if you somebody is addicted to fentanyl, this is good news. This is what we need to stop this crisis. We actually, like these people complaining about Tom Homan rounding up criminals to deport. You're making the neighborhood safer. And the drugs that are coming across. This is monumental. And it's good for Canada. It's good for Canada. It's good for the United States. It's good for Mexico. It's good for the Western Hemisphere. It's good for the world. It's clear. It's not ambiguous. Okay. So that's Canada. So we see Greenland. We see icebreakers. We reference Finland. We see how that ties to the European Union. We see how China's involved. We see how Russia's involved. We see how Iran can be isolated from all this. And then we move to Canada and we see how Trudeau acts. Now, what about our southern border? Let's find out about our southern border. Okay, let me stop sharing this and let me share an article about our southern border. Oh, here we go. All right. Monroe Doctrine, Western Hemisphere. This is amazing. What is he in office? 2 weeks? It's crazy. All right. Let me make sure I'm sharing. Yeah, I am. And we're good. Fox News. Mexico agrees to deploy 10,000 troops to U.S. border in exchange for tariff pause. So 10,000 personnel, Canadian border with the United States. 10,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexican border. A fentanyl czar. This is exciting. Tom Homan reported that the border crossings are down 93%. Can you believe this? 93%. Mexico agrees to deploy 10,000 troops to the U.S. border in exchange for tariff pause. Trump administration officials are working with Mexico on a wider deal. By Andres Hagstrom, Fox News, published February 3rd, 2025, yesterday. Mexico has agreed to deploy 10,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexican border in exchange for a 1-month delay, same as Canada, on President Trump's threatened tariffs. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Monday. Sheinbaum made the announcement on social media Monday morning, roughly 12 hours before 12 hours before the tariffs were set to take effect. Trump and Sheinbaum spoke on Monday and agreed that Mexico will do more to combat drug trafficking into the U.S. and that the U.S. will step up efforts to block the flow of firearms into Mexico. There it is. Reminds you of the Colombian situation where we're going to deport these criminals back to Colombia, and the Colombian president says no, and he's going to interfere. Trump has a phone call. Next thing you know, they're taking them, and the president of Colombia is sending his own plane to help. That's leadership, and it's clarity, and it's the interest of Colombia to get in line, and it's in our interest to make Colombia get in line. And if they want to be part of our success, if Mexico wants to sell their stuff in our country, and Canada wants to sell their stuff in our country, and Colombia wants to be under the umbrella of the United States in terms of protection and the economic might, well, then do your part. That's what Trump's saying. This is real politics, as real as it gets. And does it hurt? Who's getting hurt by this? Is Mexico actually getting hurt by enforcing its border, by starting to take the mafia and cartels and fentanyl drug problems seriously? Does that hurt Mexico? Does it hurt Canada? So all this chaos by the Democrats and liberals crying out loud, you're making immigration illegal. Who's making immigration illegal? People that are violating the immigration process and who are either already convicted or charged are being told to leave. And then Guantanamo Bay day, he's saying, hey, if you're a really serious criminal, we'll change 30,000 beds down there, make this a deportation center until we find a place to send these people so they don't just come right back across the border. Seems pretty thorough. It's amazing how many fronts are going on at once. All right. And of course, Hegseth brings the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps down there. That solves that. Down 93%. Holman's in Chicago. And you got these silly mayors like the one in Denver who are going to interfere. They're not. And look at New York. New York's behaving. New York's cooperating. They'll all start cooperating. You watch. Okay. I'm going to go on to the next one. So let me stop sharing because we got more hemisphere to cover. Okay. So Greenland, Canada, Mexican border, mentioned about Colombia. Well, there's another part of our country. There's another part of our hemisphere that's pretty significant. And here it is. Let me share. And I think this is really interesting. Okay. And let me close. Okay. And make sure. Oh, my goodness. Hold on a second. I got windows popping up. These computers, you think at this point we just get rid of these pop-ups. All right. The Washington Times, America's newspaper. Panama bids Belt and Road program goodbye after Rubio visit. Do we know what the Belt and Road program is? Let's find out. Panama Canal. Remember how Trump, by the way, he renamed the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America. Google Maps has changed it to Gulf of America. It's not just a little flippant remark. No, he made an executive order. He's made it, and that's now they're recognizing it. They're changing it to the Gulf of America. Why? It's a verbal, a nominal in name only, but with significance. In other words, Western Hemisphere, Monroe Doctrine, our Gulf. It's the Gulf of America. We're going to monitor it. We're going to control it, just like our border with Mexico and our border with Canada. And if we help Canada stay safe, it's a big buffer. And Mexico and the Panama Canal and Colombia. And then we have our great friend, okay, in Argentina and in El Salvador, these young new presidents. Fantastic. All right. Panama bids Belt and Road program goodbye after Rubio visit. First fruit of Trump pressure campaign draws angry Chinese response. And there's Rubio, who we spoke about, right? Rubio, who's from Cuban heritage, speaks Spanish. Panama's president, José Mulino, left, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived for a meeting at Presidential Palace in Panama City on February 2nd. This is by Mike Glenn, the Washington Times, Monday, February 3rd. A version of the story appeared in the, When Panama signed up for China's vast Belt and Road Initiative in 2017, so we're going to let this Belt and Road Initiative, China, it became the first country in the Latin American to join the massive international infrastructure financing project that Beijing had used to win friends and expand its global influence. So you see, we're not the only ones who are thinking geopolitically, okay, and strategically. China has a Belt and Road Initiative, okay? And what is that? They offer massive international infrastructure and financing projects to other countries in order to win friendships with them and have global influence. Global influence where? Latin America, Central America, in our hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere, a violation of the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine. Not a crazy concept. Taking over Greenland, not a crazy concept. Controlling the Panama Canal, not a crazy concept. 5 years later, Panama would be the first country in the Western Hemisphere to withdraw from the Belt and Road program. Rubio goes down there, and they're gone. They get out of the program. The first fruit of President Trump's pressure campaign in the region. Although it was overlooked amidst talks on illegal immigration and the future of Panama Canal, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was quick to claim victory after visiting Panama over the weekend on the Belt and Road issue. Previous U.S. administrations have looked at the program uneasily as a means for the ruling Chinese Communist Party to win global clout and ensnare participating countries in damaging debt. See? So it's not just about the cost of the canal. It's about this program that China offered them. They accepted, and there's no free lunch. Now they're in debt politically and financially to China, and therefore China has influence. Influence where? In our hemisphere. It's really just so simple, isn't it? It's so simple. But when the bureaucracy is so entwined and these people never leave Washington and it's all about themselves and it's the ping pong game between Republicans and Democrats, then none of this matters. And what seems so common sense and obvious becomes ridiculous. It's like the USAID, US aid. I mean, these programs that they were funding are just outrageous. But the thought of stopping it just seems impossible until somebody like Trump comes along and gives Musk permission with Trump's approval on each thing to say, what are we spending money on? President José Raúl Mulino's announcement Sunday that Panama will let its participation in China's Belt and Road Initiative expire, quote, is a great step forward for U.S. Panama relations, a free Panama Canal, and another example of President Trump's leadership to protect our national security and deliver prosperity for the American people, Mr. Rubio wrote on social media after leaving Panama for a stopover in El Salvador. That gentleman down there, what he's doing with El Salvador is just, it's an amazing story. We're going to go into that. I give you my word. I am going to keep exploring and finding these leaders, many of them young, and learn about them. What's happening around the world in little countries and big countries? And how is freedom being spread? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and most importantly, the freedom of individuals to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. One measure of the U.S. breakthrough was the quick and angry reaction from Beijing, which kept a relatively low profile as Mr. Trump began a whirlwind to his presidency on the domestic and foreign policy fronts. Panama's decision was regrettable. That's a bad word. Fu Kong, the Chinese ambassador to the United Nations, told reporters in New York, the smear campaign that is launched by the U.S. and some of the other Western countries on the Belt and Road Initiative is totally groundless. After meeting with Mr. Rubio, Mr. Mulino agreed not to renew the memorandum of understanding that his predecessor signed with China on the former senator's first foreign trip as America's top diplomat. He's a friend of America. Panama is a strong partner and ally of the United States, Mr. Rubio said Monday. He called his discussions with Mr. Mulino frank and respectful. Although Mr. Trump has focused much of his public criticism on Panama and its operation of the canal and what he says is a growing Chinese influence over the operation of the American-built waterway. A top Republican in Congress said the Belt and Road decision could prove just as consequential. Representative Michael McCall, a Texas Republican and former chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said China's encroachment into the Western Hemisphere, Monroe Doctrine, including I'm saying Monroe Doctrine, that wasn't in the story, including contracts by a Hong Kong company to operate critical ports at both ends of the Panama Canal. See that? So China goes in there, they're gonna help them out. There's no bad intentions by China, of course. No, that's crazy. Of course there is. Look what happens. The Panama Canal, a Hong Kong company was to operate critical ports at both ends of the Panama Canal. So who's in control of the Panama Canal then? China. Amounted to a clear and present danger to U.S. interest in Latin America. And that's just, the article is going to bring up the point I'm thinking about right now. Where was the Biden administration during all this? Do you realize how dangerous it was? How much danger we were in if Kamala Harris won? All this stuff is taking place. Obviously, none of it would be taking place. And all the negative, all the grotesque spending, and all the deadly spread of cancer, the rot, the cultural and governmental rot, and the geopolitical weakness and the lack of strategy would just go on. American demise would be certain. The Biden administration was asleep at the wheel, focusing on promoting woke policies abroad while China consolidated power in our own backyard, he said. I'm thrilled to see Secretary Rubio and the Trump administration already course correcting, charting a new path for the U.S. and our neighbors in Latin America. He said Panama's decision to cancel its Belt and Road contract with China was a tremendous victory, not only for the United States, but also for the Panamanian people who are escaping China's debt trap diplomacy. You see, this is what you learn here, right? We're going to go deeper. It's not just it's not just the cost of the ships. It's that China was gaining a foothold in the hemisphere. A serious our ships use that canal. Our military uses that canal. And China's going to control the port at the beginning and at the end on either side. Well, we're using USAID to send money to promote transgender operas in various countries around the world. And this is the way he expressed it. Not only for the United States, it's not only a tremendous victory for the United States, but also for the people of Panama who are escaping China's debt trap diplomacy. You say, well, here's our Belt and Road, right? And we'll give you money, we'll help you with your infrastructure. But then what? Then you owe them. You owe China. Then China owes you. Follow the money. If you're in debt to China, well, then you're going to respond. So now that's broken. That spell, that curse is broken. Critics accuse, of course, there's always critics. Critics accuse Beijing of using the critics of China. Okay, critics accuse Beijing of using the Belt and Road Initiative to lure developing countries into signing up for unsustainable loans for infrastructure projects. It's like predatory lending. When the nation faces financial challenges or the project does not generate the expected return, China can seize the assets or demand crippling payments in return. In other words, they would end up with the Panama Canal. It's crazy. The Belt and Road Initiative, a pet project of Chinese President Xi Jinping, has been billed as extending China's soft power and using its huge currency surpluses to advance its foreign policy goals. In the 10 years since the project began, some 150 countries have signed memorandums of understanding with China to explore participating in the Belt and Road Initiative, according to a study by the Wilson Center think tank last year. Isn't that crazy? But you see, China's on the move. They're thinking geopolitically. They're thinking strategy. They're right. 150 countries have signed memorandums. Countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. By the way, what's in those countries? Natural resources. The same resources we talked about, we've referenced in Greenland. So China makes a deal. We're going to lend you money for infrastructure in these various countries in Latin America, Asia, Africa. If it doesn't work out and they can't repay, well, then China, just like the bank takes your house if you can't pay it, China takes their assets. What's the asset? The asset could be land with these minerals that we need. Okay. Through countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America soon began hosting Belt and Road Initiative projects, which quickly expanded beyond roads and bridges to include the financing of ports and harbors, high-speed data networks, and satellite television service. You know what comes to mind right now? The financing of ports, just by that expression. This is really what Ukraine's about. It's about Russia having a port, right? It's strategic for Russia, Ukraine. And you can never forget that. The geography of life is so real. Real estate. It's real. Okay? And that port in Ukraine, they want that port. That's what it's about. At the end of the day, they want that port. And Russia feels that they need that port. Just like China is trying to finance ports that these countries potentially can't pay for so that China can take possession of them. The rapid expansion has generated questions as many belt and road infrastructure projects did not meet their billing. The terms and conditions of BRI financing were often shielded from public view through strict non-disclosure agreements, which in turn set off alarm bells with institutions like the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, the Wilson Center said in its study. BRI, I'm going to keep reading because this is really important. We need to understand what China is doing. BRI linked defaults in countries such as Sri Lanka and Zambia led to political instability and violence because of the steep inflation, spiraling rates of poverty, and heavy taxes imposed to pay off foreign creditors, typically in China. Italy signed a Belt and Road Initiative with China in 2019, the only one of the group of 7 leading industrialized nations to participate in a project primarily focused on developing countries. Rome declined to renew its memorandum of understanding in 2023. Still, the U.S. will be pressed to match China's growing investment and trade portfolio with countries across Latin America. Many of these will look to Beijing if Mr. Trump makes accessing U.S. markets more difficult. China's state firms are major investors in the region's energy, infrastructure, and space industries, and the country has surpassed the United States as South America's largest trading partner. Diana Roy, a senior writer at the Council on Foreign Relations, wrote in a recent survey of China's growing influence in Central and South America. I'm going to finish this up. She noted that China in South America's top trading partner and the second largest in Latin America, behind only the U.S. Quote, Beijing has also expanded its cultural, diplomatic, and military presence throughout the region, she said. Most recently, China celebrated the opening of a mega port in Peru, which Mr. Xi attended. All right. This is really great. I'm glad we found this. Honestly, I'm proud of this. I think when we keep doing this and we find these themes, and you go back to the history of the Monroe Doctrine, then you understand what Trump's trying to do. And we look from Greenland to China to Mexico and to the border and Homan and Panama and Colombia, and we see what China's up to, and you realize, whoa, thank God Trump's doing what he's doing, not just to stop it. But could you imagine if China just kept marching along this way and Harris was in office and just continued to march down the woke insanity path? Wow. And Musk, don't forget what Musk is doing right now. Exposing the spending, the waste, and all this is offense. The Democrats don't know what to do. Kennedy got confirmed by the committee. Now it goes to the full Senate. We'll see what happens to Tulsi, but it looks like things are moving along. Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, he's on it, man. This is exciting. We got great people in office. We got just about an hour, so I got to go. Okay. Life beckons, so I'm going to run. This was a lot of fun. Please send your comments, like, share, send emails, tell your friends. Remember, Apple Podcast now, Spotify, Substack, X. We're growing. I think Rumble soon. I got to check with Mrs. Producer Lady and see where we are. You have a great day. God bless you. See you soon. Thanks for listening.